By profession, Joseph Jordan is an environmental, health, and safety representative employed by the product division and engineering facility of Sea Ray Boat Company in Merritt Island, Florida. He is also the MUFON State Section Director for Brevard County, Florida, home of the Kennedy Space Center. Joe has been involved in the field of ufology for 16 years and has been a MUFON member since 1993. In 1994, he co-founded CE4 Research Group to expand his research and document the findings of his work with the alien abduction experience. David James Rufino works in pharmacy services during the day and as a researcher, webmaster, and counselor on his own time. He was born in Bergen County, New Jersey, but has lived in Northern California most of his life. David is administrator for the Delusion Resistance, a website dedicated to biblical prophecy and to educating both Christians and others about how the Bible prophesied our present day and age, with specific emphasis on the UFO phenomenon, alien abduction, and evolution theory. He is also a founder and counselor with the Alien Abduction Crisis Centers of America, an online counseling ministry that emphasizes a proven method for stopping alien abduction. David, a Messianic Jew, is an ordained minister, a field investigator with MUFON, and is author of numerous articles dealing with UFOs and alien abduction. He and Joe Jordan are currently co-writing a book about alien abduction and its cessation. Please welcome Joe Jordan and David Rufino.
I want to thank everyone for coming today. This has been 15 years to get to this point where we can actually speak in a quality of people that study this phenomenon like yourselves, and to be here in Roswell, New Mexico at the Roswell, New Mexico Festival and the Roswell UFO Conference. I ask you today, as we do this talk, if you could just set aside any preconceived notions you might have about aliens, UFOs, abductions, and let us share with you something that we have worked on for 15 years. It's a fascinating piece. I'm sure you'll be amazed. As you see from the title, The Unwanted Piece of the UFO Puzzle, whenever I've tried to do this talk, it's been a very challenging talk for people to sit and listen to. It will be challenging for you. That's why I asked you to be open to this. We are about putting the pieces of the puzzle all together on the table to be able to see what this UFO phenomenon is about. We are still bringing pieces to the table. All I ask is that I could bring mine to the table. This is happening today. You are here to witness it. This will go out to the world. My piece is now on the table. For years it's been the unwanted piece, and you'll see why. But thank you for coming today so that I could lay my piece down on the table, just as all the other researchers have over this weekend. Alien abduction, the three options that we have. The first one, there are extraterrestrials that are behind the abductions. The second, there are extraterrestrials and they are not doing the abductions. And the third option, there are no extraterrestrials and abductions are being done by something else.
We're here today in what we would consider a courtroom, the second most important trial in the history of mankind, the people versus the aliens, or the extraterrestrials. We're here in a courtroom today. You're in the jury, but you are also a judge, because what you hear in the jury box, you're going to have to judge.
The perpetrators, the Greys, the reptilians, the insectoids, and the Nordics.
The defense has had its witnesses on the stand for over 50 years. The witnesses for the defense are the entities themselves, who have always been in absentia. They've never shown up for court. The abductees, who bring the message from the entities, who refuse to come to court, and the channelers or the psychics, who bring the messages they receive from the entities, who still refuse to come to court.
The absent defendants have committed perjury. One case in point, they have lied about their address. In the 1950s and early 1960s, their message, they're from planets within our solar system. From 1970s on, human spacecraft visit the planets in our solar system, find no life. Condition on other planets found to be hostile to life. From the 1970s on, their story changes, claim their origins are from Orion, Pleiades, Sirius, and on and on.
Their projections are always unreliable. This is a cover from a book, Project World Evacuation by the Ashtar Command, full of prophecies. But you'll notice that it says on the back of the book, predicted to occur by the year 2000. Well, it's 2008 and nothing's happened yet.
They made many claims which lack substance. For instance, they are our benefactors. They are the ones who have created us by using DNA. Jesus, Moses, Buddha, Muhammad, and other religious leaders are really them. They will guide us in our next evolutionary leap. That the earth is actually a living organism. They teach that the earth will be destroyed if they cannot change mankind. They teach that they are more advanced both technologically and spiritually. They teach that they are corporeal beings and that they reside in other star systems.
The defense has had the witness stand for over 50 years. Now it's time for the prosecution to present its witnesses.
Testimony for the prosecution. Jack Valet. Credentials, Bachelor of Science degree in Mathematics from Sorbonne. Master of Science in Astrophysics from the University of Lille. PhD in Computer Science from Northwestern University. National Advisory Committee of University of Michigan College of Engineering. Was involved in early work on artificial intelligence. Dr. Valet carefully studied the problem of UFOs for many years with J. Allen Hynek. He's written 9 books and many papers about his research in the UFO phenomenon.
He should know what he's talking about, right? One of the things he says is, we are dealing with a yet unrecognized level of consciousness, independent of man, but closely linked to the earth. I do not believe anymore that UFOs are simply spacecraft or some race of extraterrestrial visitors. This notion is too simplistic to explain their appearance, the frequency of their manifestations through recorded history, and the structure of the information exchanged with them during contact.
The medical examination to which abductees are said to be subjected, often accompanied by sadistic sexual manipulation, is reminiscent of the medieval tales of encounters with demons. It makes no sense in a sophisticated or technical or biological framework. Any intelligent being equipped with the scientific marvels that UFOs possess would be in a position to achieve any of these alleged scientific objectives in a shorter time and fewer risks.
He also says, impressive parallel can be made between UFO occupants and the popular conception of demons. He continues, UFOs can project images of fabricated scenes designed to change our belief systems. And he says also, human belief is being controlled and conditioned. Man's concepts are being rearranged, and we may be heading for a massive change of human attitudes towards the paranormal abilities and extraterrestrial life.
The symbolic display seen by the abductees is identical to the type of initiation, ritual, or astral voyage that is embedded in the occultic tradition of every culture. The structure of abduction stories is identical to that of occult initiation rituals. The UFO beings today belong to the same class of manifestation as the occult entities that were described in centuries past.
Testimony for the prosecution. Joseph Allen Hynek. Credentials: he had a Bachelor of Science from the University of Chicago, a PhD in astrophysics at Yerkes Observatory, was in the Department of Physics and Astronomy at Ohio State University. He specialized in the study of stellar evolution and the identification of spectroscopic binaries. He's a scientific consultant to Project Sign, Project Grudge and Project Blue Book. In 1978, he delivered a talk on UFOs to the UN General Assembly, and he founded the Center for UFO Studies.
If UFOs are indeed somebody else's nuts and bolts hardware, then we must still explain how such tangible hardware can change shape before our eyes, vanish in the Cheshire Cat manner, seemingly melt away in front of us, or apparently materialize mysteriously before us without apparent detection by persons nearby or in neighboring towns. We must wonder, too, where UFOs are hiding when not manifesting themselves to human eyes.
Another peculiarity is the alleged ability of certain UFOs to dematerialize. There are quite a few reported instances where two distinctly different UFOs hovering in a clear sky will converge and eventually merge into one object. These are the types of psychic phenomena that are confronting us in the UFO mystery.
That was that one. We should consider the various factors that strongly suggest a linkage or at least a parallelism with occurrences of a paranormal nature.
Many UFO reports, he said, seem to pertain more to accounts of poltergeist and other types of psychic manifestations than to actual solid items of nuts and bolts hardware. This is one of the reasons, added Dr. Hynek, why I cannot accept the obvious explanation of UFOs as visitors from outer space.
Testimony for the prosecution, Raymond E. Fowler. Credentials: BA degree, magna cum laude from Gordon College of Liberal Arts. Tour of duty with U.S. Air Force Security Service. 25 years with GET Government Systems as a senior planner for the Minuteman Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Program. J. Allen Hynek said Ray Fowler is an outstanding UFO investigator. Director of Investigations for the International Mutual UFO Network, which is MUFON, and Ray has had books on UFOs published in the USA between 1974 and 1997.
And he said, I have watched in dismay as a number of respected UFO researchers move from the physical to the paraphysiological interpretation of the bizarre UFO phenomena. Now I, too, am being forced to re-examine the UFO phenomena in light of its apparent paraphysical nature.
Testimony for the prosecution. Ivor McKay. Credentials: former chairman of the respected British UFO Research Association, Bufora.
Furthermore, if one sets three occult groups against their three classifications of UFO entities and their characteristics, it is rather surprising how complementary to each other they appear to be, not only through the appearance, activities, and level of behavior, but also in the quality of mental and especially emotional reaction and response that has been noted to have occurred on contact.
Testimony for the prosecution, Lynn Cato. Lynn Cato served as a senior bibliographer of a publication on UFOs researched by the Library of Congress for the U.S. Air Force Office of Scientific Research. She conducted a 2-year investigation in which time she surveyed thousands of documents.
And she says, a large part of the available UFO literature is closely linked with mysticism and the metaphysical. It deals with subjects like mental telepathy, automatic writing, and invisible entities, as well as phenomena like poltergeist, ghost manifestations, and possession. Many of the UFO reports now being published in the popular press recount alleged incidents that are strikingly similar to a demonic possession and psychic phenomena.
Testimony for the prosecution, Dr. Pierre Guérin. Dr. Pierre Guérin, French astronomer, senior researcher at the French National Council for Scientific Research, has written extensively about the need for scientific research in the UFO field.
He says, UFO behavior is more akin to magic than to physics as we know it. The modern UFO-nauts and the demons of past days are probably identical. What is quite certain is that the phenomena is active here on our planet and active here as master.
Testimony for the prosecution, John A. Keel. John A. Keel is probably the world's foremost researcher into the paranormal, has traveled extensively to over 40 countries, investigating the unknown for almost 50 years.
John Keel observes, after studying literature on demonology, that the manifestations and occurrences described in this imposing literature are similar, if not entirely identical, to the UFO phenomenon itself. And the UFO manifestations seem to be, by and large, merely minor variations of the age-old demonological phenomena.
The UFO-nauts are the liars, not the contactees, and they are lying deliberately as part of the bewildering smokescreen which they have established to cover their real origin, purpose, and motivation.
Testimony for the prosecution, Brad Steiger. Brad Steiger is an American writer and paranormal researcher. He has authored 162 books on over 17 million copies in print, and 4 of those books are on the UFO phenomena.
I cannot help questioning whether the Space Brother might not be angels, spirit guides, and other messengers, hiding themselves in a more contemporary and thereby more acceptable persona.
Testimony for the prosecution, Ronald D. Story. Ronald Story is an internationally published science writer. Story graduated with honors from the University of Arizona in 1970, where he studied philosophy, anthropology, astronomy, logic, and the scientific method. In 1976, Story founded the original UFO Encyclopedia Project, which resulted in the classic Encyclopedia of UFOs, published by Doubleday in the New English Library in 1980. He also wrote the Encyclopedia of Extraterrestrial Encounters.
I have come to see through my continued study from the 1960s on that all the world religions have similar descriptions of astral vehicles and supernatural beings and their interactions with humankind. I believe the UFOs to be the powers and principalities as stated in the New Testament.
Testimony for the prosecution, David Stupple and William McNeese. Credentials. David Stupple was Associate Professor of Sociology in Eastern Michigan University. Interested in all forms of popular culture, he specialized in the study of flying saucer groups and tradition. He reports on space-related issues have appeared in astronomy, omni, astronautics and aeronautics, and other U.S. publications. William McNeese is an adjunct lecturer in the Department of Behavioral Sciences at the University of Michigan, Dearborn, where he teaches sociology. He has written and lectured on contemporary religious movements in the United States.
Studies of flying saucer cults repeatedly show that they are part of a larger occult social world.
Testimony for the prosecution, Farah Yurdozu. Farah Yurdozu is Turkey's first female UFO researcher and author of several best-selling books in her native land and many magazine articles. Though her work reflects a passion for all aspects of the paranormal, her main area of study is abductions and close encounters. Farah continues her work as a UFO researcher, writer, and lecturer, and appears in major UFO conferences all over the United States, from Roswell to California, Nevada to New York City.
Coming from an Islamic country, I'm Turkish. The biggest part of my investigations is alien abductions, today and in the past. In our culture, religiously and traditionally, specific beings that we call jinns, interdimensional beings, have a very important place. They have been abducting people for thousands of years, but they exist before the Islamic religion. Yes, they exist in Quran and Islamic tradition. Religiously, they accept the existence, the reality of jinns, because jinns are created by the same God who created us and the universe. My personal opinion is what they used to call evil or demonic being is the interdimensional or extraterrestrial being of today.
Testimony for the prosecution, Whitley Strieber. He is perhaps the best known for his third phase of his career, which began with Communion, an autobiographical account of his experience with strange visitors who came to his cabin in the New York countryside.
Increasingly, I felt as if I were entering a struggle that might even be more than life or death. It might be a struggle for my soul, my essence, or whatever part of me that might have reference to the eternal. There are things worse than death, I suspected. So far, the word demon had never been spoken among the scientists and doctors who were working with me. Alone at night, I worried about the legendary cunning of demons. At very least, I was going stark, raving mad.
I felt an absolutely indescribable sense of menace. It was hell on earth to be there in the presence of these entities, and yet I couldn't move, couldn't cry out, couldn't get away. I lay as still as death, suffering inner agonies. Whatever was there seemed so monstrously ugly, so filthy and dark and sinister. Of course they were demons. They had to be. And they were here, and I couldn't get away.
These people that you've just seen on the PowerPoint and what they've had to say, this is our history in the UFO realm. Keep in mind that you forget your history, you're going to repeat it. These people need to be recognized. We need not forget the work that they've done. Throughout this conference, I've listened to the different speakers, and it's amazing, after all these years in the UFO realm, when it's all about ET, the extraterrestrial, there seems to be a question. Are they really extraterrestrial? I keep hearing, could they be beings of light? Could they be angels? Could they be interdimensional beings? That question keeps coming up over and over and over and over. This is something that needs to be looked at. I'm getting ready to take you into the research that I have done over 15 years. I want to start from the beginning and let you know how I got there. In 1992, I picked up my first book about UFOs. That book opened a doorway that was to completely change my life. And I know a lot of you have probably been in that same situation. That book was UFO Crash at Roswell. When I picked up that book and looked at it, I thought I was picking up a science fiction book. I used to read science fiction as a kid. I thought, great, this ought to be a good story. I picked up that book and turned the backside of it to see what it was about. And that book was saying that this was factual stuff based on serious research. I'd never heard of such a thing. How could science fiction be real? Science fiction is an escape, a fantasy. This book caught my attention. This put me on a quest to find out what the UFO phenomenon was about. It wasn't long before I met a friend who had a UFO museum in downtown Orlando, where I live on the coast in Florida. I felt that this would be a great source to find out more about this UFO phenomenon, because being brand new into it, I had nowhere to go. This was 1992. I went over and talked to this fellow, spent many hours with him, going through books, talking to him. He was a state section director for MUFON for Orange County. When he saw that I had a real desire to try and find out what this phenomenon was about, he says, why don't you think about actually getting involved in investigations yourself? And I said, well, how do you do that? And then he introduced me to MUFON, and he showed me how I could go through training on how to do investigations on sightings, how to get this database down, how to interview a witness properly. They have extensive training to take you through to help you be able to do that, okay? I joined MUFON. I went through the training as a field investigator, and I was in a position where I was now ready to take on investigations. I worked with this person for quite a while, and then he asked me, he said, being you live over on the Space Coast, there's no chapter for MUFON over there. We don't have a state section director. Would you even consider possibly being in control of that county, and you can train up investigators under you, and that way you can receive sighting reports and go out on those investigations for that area? And I thought, wow, sure. So he sent me through the training on what I needed to do to be a state section director. I worked with the state director of Florida and was appointed state section director for Brevard County, Florida. That's where the Space Center is located. I wouldn't give up that position for anything. That's a special place, as well as this is a special place. Talk about high security at the Kennedy Space Center. I don't know how high it really is. We still get sightings around the Kennedy Space Center. That's something to think about. As I put my group together in Brevard County, I trained up 5 or 6 investigators under myself right away. We started holding monthly meetings. The public started coming to the meetings. We were off and running doing sighting investigations. We were now people that could be contacted to follow up and report this stuff and get it recorded for MUFON to go in their vast database that's been around since 1969. Something that MUFON has been working on with this database is to get all of this information in, and with technology we have today with computers, The one thing that they're looking at is a repeatability, a repeatable event in the UFO realm. The science research asks that there be a repeatable event, that the experiment can be repeated. To this day, they don't have that. As we were holding these monthly meetings to the public so that they could come in and see the work we were doing, and we could answer any questions they had and also try to get them involved with MUFON, we started seeing people come in there that had stories to tell. And the reason they were coming is because they felt that we, being investigators for MUFON, we had answers for them. Well, we didn't have answers. We were looking for the answers. But these people started coming to these meetings. And then something I noticed in these type of open monthly meetings, and MUFON warned me about this, is you get a lot of different type of people coming in there. As MUFON, we're nuts and bolts, okay? We're looking for the scientific evidence. But the people we were getting into these meetings seemed to be a little different than nuts and bolts. There was a lot of New Age people coming in, a lot of metaphysical people coming in. I didn't know what to make of that. And my state director had warned me in the beginning that this type of thing can happen when you're trying to hold a nuts and bolts MUFON meeting on once a month for the public. And he says, you need to try and keep it focused on the scientific aspect of it. But as I listened to these people, I thought to myself, I can't discount what they're saying. If we're going to be doing honest research, they're a piece of the puzzle. Not just the nuts and bolts, but all of that is a piece of this UFO phenomenon puzzle. I had to listen to what they were saying. And it was a little tough for me at the beginning, because when I got into MUFON, reading that first book and becoming a field investigator, I was an absolute agnostic. I was absolute clean-minded, open-minded, ready to look at this from the scientific perspective. But as these people started coming to the meeting, I started seeing a spiritual aspect to this phenomenon. And I didn't know what to make of it. But I knew that it had to be looked at. So I spent some time working with these people in metaphysics to see what they were about. And it was quite fascinating. They had a lot of information to share that related to this phenomenon. As I got into working with these people and still doing my sighting investigations, I got caught up in that spirituality aspect. I walked straight in with these people because I knew they had something that was very special. And I worked with them. I read everything I could get my hands on dealing in the metaphysics. I was actually practicing with them and still being able to do sighting investigations at the same time. But the one thing that I guess I have to say is that becoming involved in the metaphysical realm, am I still objective as I was as an agnostic looking at the scientific aspect? Am I? Or does that change? Keep in mind that everybody in the world has some background of belief. Was it okay to be an agnostic and to be a UFO investigator? Absolutely. Is it okay to be involved in metaphysics and the New Age realm and their belief system and be a UFO investigator? Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody with those different systems brings a different look to this phenomenon. They're able to bring a very unique piece of the puzzle. Has to be looked at objectively. They are all welcome with the information that they have to share. So this is where my next trend started into, was working with these people. Another group of people I ran into that were coming to these meetings were people who claimed that they had alien abduction experiences. Well, here's another one new to me, because I was dealing with nuts and bolts scientific investigations, also looking at a spiritual aspect, and now comes another one. And I didn't know quite what to make of that. But as we started listening to their stories, I pulled my investigators aside one day and I said, guys, you need to listen to this for a minute. We've been doing sighting investigations for 4 or 5 years now. You know what sighting investigations are like? It's like chasing your tail. You know? You go round and around and around and around. How many years have sighting investigations been going on and we still don't have an answer to what this phenomenon is? When I started listening to these people about their abduction experiences, something clicked. These people claimed that their experiences were with entities that were behind the UFO sightings. Well, duh. If you're trying to get to the true source of what this is about, wouldn't you want to get closer to the source? And that's when I realized that lights in the sky are one thing, traces on the ground are another thing. But when you're actually talking to a person who's had contact with the entities themselves, that's getting on the front line. I felt that if we're going to find answers to this phenomenon, that's where it's going to be found. Because they are in contact. Something that, as an investigator, I wasn't. I could only listen to these people tell their stories about being in contact. When we got into this UFO abduction research, we realized that these people were hurting people. We kept hearing over and over how their lives had been destroyed, relationships destroyed. These people were looking for help, and they didn't know where to go. They just wanted to be heard. So we wanted to start listening to them, start documenting abduction research, but we needed to train ourselves up. Because the one thing I cautioned my investigators with, I said, you know what, these people are already hurting. We don't want to do any harm to these people. We need to be very careful that we don't cause any more damage than what's already been done by the experience that they've had. So we consumed all of the research we could get our hands on. All the top researchers in the country back in the early 90s. Read their books, looked at magazine articles, all of the videos. We prepped ourselves to where if we were going to start working with people personally, we needed to be ready. We needed to be able to effectively work with them. And that's the next step that we took. Once we got to that point, we had to change the way that we were doing the investigations. MUFON at that time was not really set up to do abduction research. They're a scientific, nuts and bolts type of scientific organization. They weren't really structured to do abduction investigations. Still being MUFON members, all of us in our group, we set up another group, and that was CE4 Research Group. That's our logo. You've seen it through the conference. CE4 Research, Close Encounter of the Fourth Kind. We set up CE4 to be able to document all the research that we were getting ready to do with the abduction experiencers. We were going to continue the database just as we've been doing with investigations on sightings. This is what it's about, document, 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 so that we can find that repeatable experience that the UFO community is looking for. That repeatable event is going to be the key to all of this. We started going into the investigations. We started working with case after case and documenting their stories, just like we've been doing with the sightings. And then something really fascinating dropped in our hands. We had a fellow who shared an experience with us. And it was a very unusual experience, one that we had never heard before. This fellow, during his atypical abduction experience, said that during his experience, while it was happening, a horrific experience, just like Whitley talks about, while his experience is happening, he's in the midst of it. This fellow happening to be a Christian at the time, a new one, not very educated into the Christian theology, probably not really understanding what he was about as a Christian. But he knew as a new believer to call out in the name and authority of Jesus Christ in fear. And when he did this, that experience abruptly stopped. He was back in his bed. When we were told this story, we were puzzled. We had never heard this before. At the time, we were told by all the researchers the abduction experience cannot be stopped. But yet I'm sitting here with a man who has told me that he absolutely stopped that experience. What do I do with this? I got on the phone, contacted some of the top abduction researchers in this country. They're nice people, really nice people. They're looking for truth also. And I said, guys, I've got an unusual case here, and I'd like to run it by you to get your opinion, because I don't know what to make of it. It doesn't seem to fit in. I shared this man's story with them, and each time I shared the story, when it was time to get a response from the researchers, they would ask, can we go off the record with this? And I said, sure, just help me out here. Off the record means I can't tell you who said what, but I can tell you what they said. What they said was, yes, we have come across cases like this also. And I thought, well, why haven't you shared this? This is something that needs to be looked at, something that needs to be documented. I said, why isn't this information out there? Why did we have to come to you like this to find this out? Well, it was one or two answers I got from these researchers. The first one was, we really didn't know what to make of it. You know what? I'd have been fine with that, because I didn't know what to make of it. But what puzzled me was the second answer I got from most of them. We really didn't want to go there because it would affect our credibility in the UFO realm. Isn't that a cover-up to withhold information? We hear cover-up, cover-up, cover-up all through this UFO community. I'm sorry, but some of our top researchers are not giving us all the information. The ones we've been relying on for the truth are not giving us all the information. You know what? I had no problem with that, because I had just been given one of those cases, and they just confirmed that there were more out there. And I said, guys, I appreciate you helping me here and answering my questions. I said, I understand you're in a position that you don't want to step into with this type of information. I said, but I am in that position. I have nothing to lose here. I work for a living. I don't have to rely on my books and my DVDs and all of that. I'm a researcher. I want to get this information out. It's a piece of the puzzle that needs to be shared. You know what they said? Please do, because we can. So that started my research into looking for other cases like this. Because if that was a database that existed, it needed to be documented. It wasn't long before I ended up with a second case, exactly the same thing. Right after that second case, there was a reporter friend of mine from the Florida Today newspaper, good friend Billy Cox. He's done a lot of great articles on UFOs and stuff. He had written a number of articles on me in the local paper dealing with MUFON. And I went to Billy and I said, you know, I need to share this with you. Well, Billy said, you know, this has a religious aspect to it. I think you need to talk to the researcher we have that does articles from a religious perspective. And he introduced me to Rita Elkins, a reporter there at the Florida Today. Rita was fascinated by what I had to share with her. She thought this needed to go out. Well, thankfully, Rita printed a great article. And I thought, this is great. We get an article in our local paper. We got recognition on this, and maybe somebody will see it. Well, about 2 weeks went by, after that article was released in our local paper in Brevard County, Florida, when I started getting calls all over the country. And people saying, I read that article in my paper. And I'm looking at the ID caller on the phone and I'm going, what do you mean your paper? Where are you at? Oh, we're in Massachusetts. Another one, Wisconsin, Arkansas. And I'm going, wait a minute. This article was in my local paper. What are you guys talking about? So I called Billy down at the paper and I said, Billy, these people are saying they're seeing this article all over the country. He says, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that Today paper is owned by the Gannett Corporation. They got about 80, 90 affiliates around the country. That article went everywhere. And then about a month later, somebody calls me and says, you know you're in Flying Saucer Review? I said, what? Your article, it's in Flying Saucer Review. I said, I never talked to Flying Saucer Review. Sky Ambrose had submitted that article to Flying Saucer Review, and they printed it, because it wasn't my article, it was about me and my research, but it was Florida Today's article. That story went worldwide. We were now in a position to where people who had had this experience and had been able to stop it in that manner felt comfortable enough to share that story with us, where they weren't comfortable being able to share that with other researchers. Now the database was starting to build. Over the past 15 years, we have testimonies, over 300 of them. You can go to the websites that we have. I've got 75 of them posted on the internet. You can see the evidence of this ability to stop this experience, and to stop this experience in that name. This makes you question, how does this all fit in with this UFO experience, this abduction experience? There seems to be an absolute spiritual connection with this. And we didn't know what to make of all of this. We had to look at this biblically, because if the research is showing that this name and authority of Jesus Christ stops this experience, and I've got case upon case upon case upon case to back this up, then there must be something in this Bible that the Christians use that explains why this works. So as researchers, the proper research demands that we look at Scripture in relation to our research findings. Now let's examine this evidence. And Dave Ruffino is going to take you through and show you how this possibly could fit in, how this name and authority of Jesus Christ could stop this experience, and why would it stop this experience. This is part of what we have to look at to make this puzzle complete. I didn't introduce it. I came at this and got totally caught off guard with this whole thing. I didn't look for this. This dropped in my lap, and all I did was pick up that piece and said, I'm going to research this, I'm going to see where this goes, and we're going to let you absolutely see what we've looked at, okay? And Dave's going to start now.
Greeting. Now we go with the evidence of the prosecution, the testimony of the Creator. What are the credentials of this testimony? Well, the authors were all inspired by the Creator Himself, seen in 2 Timothy. His word is alive and powerful, as seen in Hebrews. His word has withstood the test of time, still valid today. His precepts are applicable in every culture and in every era, and his writings corroborate what we've examined so far, as we shall see. Question is there a conflict that exists between the Creator and some of his created beings? Let's look at his authors, those who knew him intimately, and what they had to say. It says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places, and that's in Ephesians. The Greek word for principalities is arche. It means the first place, principality, rule, majesty of angels and demons. The second word for powers means the leading and more powerful among the created beings, superior to man, spiritual potentates. Rulers of darkness in the Greek means the lords of this world, prince of this age, the devil and his demons, who rule over persons in whom darkness becomes visible and holds sway. And the Greek for spiritual wickedness in high places, it means belonging to a spirit or a being higher than man but inferior to God, evil purposes and desires, and of the stars and of the clouds. So we're in a battle here. Not just us, but God, and we're fighting with. Okay, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2 says, "Where in time past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now works in the children of obedience." If we look at the word prince in the Greek, it means a ruler, a commander, a chief, a leader. The word for power means the power of authority, influence, and the right privilege. The word for air means the air, particularly the lower, denser air as distinguished from the higher and rarer air, the atmospheric region, which is where we see our UFO friends. And the spirit means a spirit higher than a man, but lower than God, an angel, showing that this is battles in the spiritual realm, not necessarily in the physical. This whole thing is about lies and deception. And quote somebody I'm not too fond of, by the skillful and sustained use of propaganda, one can make a people see even heaven as hell, or an extremely wretched life as a paradise. Adolf Hitler also said, "Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it," which is what we've had in this realm for the last 50 years. We've heard the same thing over and over and over again, and it's sunk into so many minds that people believe it now. 2 Timothy, Paul says, "For a time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap upon for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned to fables." And the Greek word for fables there is means a fiction, a fable, an invention, or a falsehood. Much of this stuff is a fiction or a falsehood. Then we go to 2 Thessalonians. "For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming." And I have this outlined in red because these are important right here, more important than the rest. "The coming of the lawless one is in accordance with the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them a strong delusion that they should believe a lie." Much of this UFO phenomena is built upon delusion, and is a delusion. Now we have a couple of sayings from the Creator himself. "Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when will all these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?' And Jesus answered and said to them, 'Take heed that no one deceives you.'" So he knew that there was going to be a deception. "For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,'" which these UFO nuts often say, "and will deceive many." And he said, "Take heed that you not be deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and the time is drawn near. Therefore, do not go after them." Remember that, because we'll get into this later. He said also, "For there will be a time of great tribulation, such has never been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Then if anyone says to you, 'Look, here's the Christ,' or 'There,' do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders again, and deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you so beforehand," given a warning beforehand. And then Paul says in Galatians, "But even if we, or an angel," which many of these beings say they are, "from heaven preach any other gospel to you than what we have preached to you, let them be accursed. And he says again in 2 Corinthians, and no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself, which many UFOs do, into an angel of light. And the word light there means a heavenly light such as surrounds angels when they appear on earth. It's interesting to note that we get the word phosphorescence from this word phos. Many UFO eyewitnesses claim that the object they observed had a phosphorescent glow. And we should also note that Lucifer means light bearer. Speaking of Lucifer, God directly talks to him in Isaiah. And he says, how you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars. I will also sit on the mount of congregation on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That's always been his desire, to be like God or to usurp God. And then God goes ahead and says, you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest parts of the pit. Those who see you will gaze at you and consider you, saying, is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, who did not open the house of the prisoners? He's going to be shown for what he really is someday. Now we have a crucial question to look at. And this question was asked last year at the roundtable discussion, the UFO conference. And that question was, why do all these aliens, greys, reptilians, etc., why do they all fear Jesus? There's got to be a reason why. There's got to be a reason why when a person cries out the name of Jesus during abduction that these things take off. Well, let's see what that reason might be. We got to examine the person of Jesus, okay? We got to look in Isaiah where it says, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And he goes on to say, of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Okay, so what do these words mean that are in green? Let's look at them and see. Okay, the word wonderful is Pele in Hebrew, and it means something wonderful, admirable, or a miracle of God. The word counselor means to counsel or to give counsel. Mighty God, which is Al-Gibor, means God, the one true God, Jehovah, and Gibor means strong or mighty. Everlasting Father, which is Ad-Ab, it means perpetuity, forever, continuing, future, ancient, of past time, forever, for future time, of continuous existence, and God is the Father. And of course we know Prince of Peace is Sar Shalom. Shalom means peace, and Sar means prince. So this gives you kind of an idea why, if these things are in rebellion towards God, why they take off when people yell out the name of Jesus. I would too if I was them. Here we see both an Old Testament and a New Testament testimony of who Jesus is. In Isaiah it says, and there is no other God beside me, a just God and a Savior. There is none beside me. Look to me and be saved, all you ends of the earth, for I am God and there is no other. I have sworn by myself, because there's nobody else for him to swear by. The word has gone out of my mouth in righteousness and shall not return, that to me every knee shall bow and every tongue shall take an oath. And then we jump down to the next one, which Paul was writing to the Philippians. Therefore God has also exalted him and given him the name which is above every name. Remember that, it's above every name. That's crucial. Therefore, at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow, of those in heaven and of those on earth and of those under the earth. Who's under the earth? And every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Sounds like pretty powerful to me. Jesus was talking to the Jewish religious leaders at the time, and he said, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Then the Jewish religious leaders said to him, you are not yet 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham? And Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. And the Greek for that is, for I is I, or me, or my, and for am is to be, to exist, to happen, and to be present. Well, Jesus was saying, before Abraham was, I existed. Sounds pretty powerful to me. Many scholars believe that when Jesus said "I am" to the Jewish religious leaders, he was actually speaking in Hebrew. The Hebrew phrase, which is pronounced "Eya asher eya," which that I am, has an imperfective aspect, meaning that the time aspect can be varied, as it is in this case. In essence, the phrase means "I am what I was," and "I am what I will be in the future," and "I am in the future what I have always been." It's God's way of revealing his eternal nature. This is further pointed out by Paul, who said the eternal truth about Jesus Christ, that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And then we have John the Apostle, who further certifies it, that when he says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made." And Jesus the Messiah notarized this by saying, "I am the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last." So the answer is, fallen angels and demons in the guise of extraterrestrials fear Jesus because they know he will judge them, and that he will sentence them, and that he will carry out the sentence. Let's look at something below that will show this. We have to see, are there any written accounts about encounters between Jesus and aliens, or extraterrestrials, or demons? Considering that aliens are synonymous with demons and fallen angels, that answer is an absolute yes. Let's look at the reaction when demons met up with Jesus in the Old Testament, or in the New Testament, excuse me. When he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him, and he cried out with a loud voice, and he said, "What have I have to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God, do not torment me." Okay, so they know that someday they will be tormented, thrown into a lake of fire by God. They know it ahead of time, and that's why they take off when the name of Jesus is said in an alien abduction event. Now in a synagogue there was a man who had a spirit of an unclean demon, and he cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Let us alone. What do we have to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." We see that they recognize Jesus as the Holy One of God. And in another account it says, "And he healed many that were sick of various," divers means various, "diseases, and cast out many devils, and suffered not the devils to speak, because they knew him." Okay. This section, short section, is titled, "We Don't Get Fooled Again," or do we? There was a famous writer named George Santayana. He was a poet and philosopher, and he says, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." We've all heard that, right? Well, God scooped him by about 2,500 years, because in Ecclesiastes he wrote, "That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun." Everybody's heard that before. "Is there anything of which it may be said, 'See, this is new'? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after." Nothing new under the sun. Now there's a group called the Ashtar Command that's out there, and they like to think that they're the answer to all the world's problems, and they prove that there's nothing new under the sun. Remember we talked earlier about beings of light, Satan transforming himself into an angel of light, and all different kind of spiritual things that we talked about earlier. Well, this is directly from the Ashtar Command page. The Ashtar Commands are humans from other worlds of God's creation, extraterrestrial beings of light that exist in higher dimensions and of spiritual life. They are the original Adam Kudman blueprint, that is, perfected humans that vibrate to the Christ vibrations and are part of the collective Christ. Remember when we read before, he said, many are going to say that they are the Christ, do not believe them? Lord Sonata, the Ashtar Command, Galactic Command, Intergalactic Command, the Ascended Masters of Light, the Angels of Light, the Councils of Light, serving Mother, Father, Creator, Source, and Divine Plan. And then if we go down to the Bible, we can see that Ashtar is really not a new thing, because it says, "And they forsook the Lord, and they served Baal and Ashtaroth." And we could look down and see it says Ashtaroth has been around for a long time. The Moabites called them Ashtar, the Canaanites called them Ashtart, and the Babylonians called them Ishtar. Nothing new under the sun. Ashtar is an interdimensional being from another galaxy. He is here on our behalf to help us in our ascension. Remember Satan said, "I will be like God," our ascension, and our spiritual evolution. Here we go again with the spiritual stuff. He is working in conjunction with Sonata a.k.a. Jesus, according to them, and Archangel Michael. He is our shepherd looking over the flock with much love and tenderness. Here you can see a few pictures down here of some drawings people have drawn or painted when they've seen this supposed entity. Okay, now there's another movement called the Raelian movement, and they're very similar. And they're saying that human scientists from another planet created all life on Earth using DNA. Funny, before there was any DNA mentioned in our science, this stuff never came up. Traces of this epic masterpiece of creation can be found in all religious writings and traditions. It is to them that Moses, Jesus, Buddha, and Muhammad referred. It is now time to welcome them. And there's kind of a scary picture on the bottom because that's the Star of David, and there's a swastika right in the center of it. And here's a little bit about Claude Maurice Marcel Vourlon, a.k.a. Rael. It says, on the 13th of December 1973, French journalist Rael was contacted by a visitor from another planet and asked to establish an embassy to welcome these people back to Earth. He told Rael that, "We are the ones who designed all life on Earth. You mistook us for gods. We were at the origin of all your main religions. Now that you are mature enough to understand this, we would like to enter official contact through an embassy." Well, actually what they're saying is, now that you don't hold to your base religions anymore and we can manipulate you, now we want to contact you. Okay, the aliens come to us with a consistent message. One, they preach a New Age gospel that mankind can attain godhood. Number two, they encourage the doing away with biblical truths. No other religion. There is no sin or need for atonement, they say. They say Jesus did not die on the cross for the atonement of sin. They say Jesus' resurrection was an alien intervention. They say Jesus was just another ascended master, half human and half alien. They teach reincarnation and karma. They teach moral relativism. Everyone has their own truth. They teach pantheism, which means nature is God and God is nature, and they also teach ecumenism. They teach a one world government, and they teach a one world religion. Extraterrestrials embrace the doctrine of every world religion except the two that have foundations in the Bible, Judaism and Christianity. They upstage their creator. Our research has shown that UFO flaps have purposefully been orchestrated to occur at or around every contemporary prophetic event or Christian revival. This is a little graph that the guys at MUFON were nice enough to send me in the MUFON Journal. And it's the UFO reports year by year, and you can see the year and you can see the number of reports right next to it. The ones that I've highlighted in red are the spike years. You can see in 1897 there was 13, 1908, 9, and then they jumped down, and then, you can see a pattern, like a saw blade, sort of. Well, what do these things mean? I think they're more than coincidence. The UFO sightings tend to occur during prophetic events, Let's look, in 1897, Theodore Herzl convenes the first Zionist Union convention in Switzerland. Well, incidentally, that was the first time that the Jewish people thought that they had a chance for a homeland. That's a prophetic occurrence. 1908, revival sweeps around the world. The height of the Azusa Street revival that swept throughout the world and introduced Pentecostalism. That was another spike year of UFO sightings. 1916, several things happened. Chaim Weizmann, a Jewish chemist, developed a way to synthesize acetone, allowing the British to produce smokeless gunpowder. And this set the stage for the Balfour Declaration, which was the British declaration that said the Jews should have a homeland in Palestine. There was also several genocides of the Ottoman Turks, of the Christian Armenians, the Christian Assyrians, the Christian Greeks, and also many revivals happened in America. 1920, many revivals in the Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian churches, moral decadence in America, the beginning of the Roaring Twenties. 1930, the revival started all over the world, probably responsible to the Great Depression. 1942, the Jewish people are taken from the internment camps to the death camps, which started the Holocaust. And it's interesting, too, that the Allied and Axis powers and air crews started to talk about something called Foo Fighters at this time. 1944, there was another spike, and late in that year, the cessation of sending Jewish people to the death camps happened, and the gassing of the Jewish people ends as well. 1945, the world learns about the Holocaust, turning the world's sentiments towards the Jewish people and turning the tide toward the homeland for the first time in 2,000 years to the nation of Israel, all prophetic events. 1947, the United Nations vote to implement Resolution 181, which divided Palestine and gave part of it to the Jewish people. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls also happened in 1947. And we all know what else happened in 1947, right? 1952, the culmination of the biggest Aliyah, or homecoming, of the Jewish people to Israel. And also, that's the same year the Al-Fatah terror organization, which later became the PLO, they started a secret war against the Jews. 1965, the Jesus Movement revival, which most of us lived through. Vatican II ends with the emphasis of a one world church. Johnson's Great Society, socialism, government replaces God. 67 was the Six-Day War, which resulted in Jerusalem being in the hands of the Jewish hands for the first time in 2,000 years. 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Israel attacked but routs enemies, and the Supreme Court also made abortion legal that year. In 1975, the United Nations General Assembly, Resolution 3379 adopted, labeling Zionism as racism. Ultimately, they were calling God a racist because God was the one that wanted Zionism. Okay, this resolution was reversed in 1991. 1987 through 93 were years when there were spikes, and the first Intifada, which is a grassroots war waged on Israel by the Palestinians, occurs. Notably, when the unrest ends in 1993, the UFO reports become less. Interesting. 2001 through 2004, I won't read through all of them, but it has a lot to do with prophecy, and we shall move on. Ready?
Thank you, Dave. You see how it seems to all tie in? The way that these people have been able to stop the experience, there is a relationship to this biblically. This questions who these entities actually are. I've heard this same question being asked all through this entire conference. Who are they? It seems to be showing a pattern here. There is a biblical match for the experiences these people are having and for the descriptions of these entities, as well as other religions that have also seen them in their religions, these entities that seem to fit something in their religious perspective. This one in particular, these people have found that these entities can be defeated by this Jesus Christ, by calling out in His name and His authority. But the question you need to look at here and ask is, how do you get that authority? How does a human being able to get that authority? We know the name is over these entities, but how does that person get it? These entities in these people's lives have come against their will. They've come against it. They didn't ask to come in, okay? They've interrupted their lives. They didn't have a say in the matter. They have a say whether they want to continue with them, but they don't have a say of when the experience actually first happens. Taking on this name and authority of Jesus Christ is done through free will. This Jesus Christ says, I stand at the door and knock. You have to answer it. When you answer that door and you take Him as your Lord and Master, that authority is passed down to you. He had authority, like Dave said, over all of these beings above the earth, on the earth, and below the earth. The Bible says that when you make a relationship with this Jesus Christ, you become joint heirs to the throne of God. You are given that authority. By calling in that name, you can stop these entities. And that's what these testimonies have done. Like I said, there's 75 of them on the website you can go read. They're fascinating testimonies. How these people's lives were turned upside down. And they've been able to stop that experience. You know, I can stand up here and tell you all this, that I have these cases, that they're on the internet for you to read. And I'd have to say, trust me, that they're real. You guys know me? No. You know Dave? No. I tell you what, don't trust us. Don't trust us at all. We shared the information. What you need to trust is the evidence itself. Okay? Not what man says. Look at the evidence itself. We've seen people, researchers, that are actually put their hands on evidence. This is the actual thing that's going to show what this puzzle looks like. I want to introduce you today to living evidence that you will actually get to see face to face. You want to talk to this living evidence? You're free to. We'll start out here. Living testimony that the name and authority of Jesus Christ will stop these entities. I have had an experience with these entities. I have been able to stop that experience, change my life around. I had to give allegiance to this Jesus Christ. I'm one of the few people that I've ever heard that can say, I came to Jesus Christ through UFOs. And you can read about that story in our book that we're working on. Dave Ruffino of Delusion Resistance, living testimony. That's not it. That's still back to us. Let's show you living testimony. Lourdes Paredo from Mexico City. Evidence for the prosecution. Lourdes is a living testimony of the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these entities. Thank you, Lourdes. Bill Defendahl from Titusville, Florida. Remember that first case I told you about that I came across 10 years ago? I've been able to share that little bit of his story for 10 years. This is the first time in Bill's life that he has actually gone public to testify of the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these entities. Bill Defendahl works at the Kennedy Space Center. Next evidence, Jim Wilhelmsen. Jim Wilhelmsen's website is Echoes of Enoch. He has some fascinating information on dealing with who these entities are. It's changed his life. Matthew Kiss, Orlando, Florida. Matthew's life has been changed by the calling out in the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these entities. These people, their lives were ruined at one time. These people have overcome this. Jackie Slack, Roswell, New Mexico. Evidence. Thank you, Jackie. Joyce Aarons, West Plains, Ohio. Her whole family was involved with this abduction experience. Some of you might recognize who Joyce Aarons is.
It's Missouri.
Missouri, sorry about that. Joyce and her family are seen on TV every single year on an abduction show on A&E. Her husband, herself, they watch their daughter being taken out of the crib by these entities. It destroyed their life. It separated that family. I met Joyce in Florida. She left Missouri and came to Florida. The family split up. She saw me in a newspaper article, came to me and wanted to share about her being an abduction experiencer. I hesitantly shared with what I was working on and what I had found. Joyce wanted her life back. I worked with Joyce. She has made a change, no longer has that experience. Joyce's life has been healed. Joyce is back home with her family, and that family has been brought back together. What this enemy took away, this name and authority Jesus Christ gave back. Guy Malone. Roswell, New Mexico. Guy Malone wrote a book called Come Sail Away on his testimony on the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these entities. I met Guy over the internet years ago because when I started posting those testimonies, he had to contact me and said, I'm one of those. We need to get together. Nicole Malone, also from Roswell. Where are you from? She's from Illinois. This is Guy's wife. Her and her families, members of the family, have been destroyed by this experience. She's still in a healing process. Most of these people are still going through the healing process. It takes time, but they've been able to stop this experience. They've been able to get on the recovery of this experience. Ken Scott, Vancouver, Washington. Ken can testify to the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these entities. Wasn't he himself that did it? He was in the presence of another family member when he was younger, and an experience happened. That family member used the name and authority of Jesus Christ to stop that experience. He can testify. And I have one more. Tree Sheridan from A Global Focus. She's from Metro, D.C. She can testify to the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these entities. This is the living evidence. This is evidence you can touch. This is evidence you can talk to. Not fuzzy pictures, not funny-looking marks on the ground, not fuzzy videos of things jumping around. This is actual evidence you can touch. Remember we talked about in the beginning what MUFON was looking for and what the scientific group is looking for? They're looking for repeatability. Is there a repeatable event in the UFO community? None that we know of to this date. They're still looking for it. That would be huge, would it not? This is where the next step of our research went. As we started posting these testimonies on the website of people that have been able to stop this experience, I had no idea we were going here. All I wanted to do was post something that I was seeing. But when people started reading these testimonies of people who have gotten their lives back, they would get a hold of us and say, can you help me stop this experience? You know what? I had all the tools right here. I took what I learned from them and I said, I think we can. If you were to come to us today, we could take and show you how you can stop this experience, how you can have your life back. We have testimonies now that we've done that with. Excuse me, that's a repeatable event. This is probably the only repeatable event in the whole UFO realm, is to be able to take one thing and have it happen to somebody else. One person sees a sighting. Can the next person call the same one in? Haven't heard that one. But this is a repeatable event. We are dealing with a counseling where we help people with empowerment, that they can take control, not to be just other members of a support group and learn to live with this. This can be overcome It doesn't need to be that you just have to live with it. You can be set free from this experience. This is what the evidence is showing. Are you seeing now why we had the title, The Unwanted Piece of the Puzzle? This is very controversial in this realm. Very controversial. Next slide. Go ahead. This brings us to the next point, something else that's talked about in this field of UFOs.
Any of you who have watched anything on television about UFO phenomena,
Leave it.
you have heard about something called disclosure, official disclosure. That's all we hear about anymore. Official disclosure, let's see, a majority of those who believe in UFOs are waiting for the government to release to the general public some sort of disclosure about UFOs and their occupants. Many feel that this disclosure will happen sometime in the near future. This disclosure will supposedly reveal the truth about a mystery. How would you feel if there were two disclosures? Maybe there is. I'm going to show you that there is.
What will the forthcoming disclosure reveal? This new disclosure will reveal the same material that we have already covered and that we have shown to be information that comes from unreliable sources. This new disclosure will come from yet another unreliable sources, the governments of the world. There is a much better disclosure, and we have had it for many years.
The first disclosure revealed to us a mystery, one that is as old as creation itself. He said to them, "To you it has been given to know the mystery of the kingdom of God, but to those who are outside, all things come in parables. Now to him who is able to establish you, according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ, according to the revelation of the mystery kept secret since the world began, but now made manifest, and by the prophetic scriptures made known to all nations, according to the commandment of the everlasting God, for obedience to faith, to God, alone wise, be glory through Jesus Christ forever. Amen. And without controversy, great is the mystery of godliness. And that mystery is that God was manifest in the flesh, justified in the spirit, seen by angels, preached among the Gentiles, believed on in this world, and received up into glory."
Here is the extraterrestrial message that the world has been waiting for. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. This is the extraterrestrial message that we have seemed to have missed. The one that we seem to be getting wants to take that away from you. This is what this war is about, to take that away from you. This picture you see here is the cover of our new book, Unholy Communion. Are you starting to see that what originally Whitley Strieber about communion and his going on to help people with contact, that this is absolutely an unholy communion. This is not something good to be entertaining these angels. And we call them angels, fallen angels. That term has been brought up, I'm going to use it. This is an unholy communion. We are in a mode of resistance. The group of us that are working with this have found that this is an absolute war. This is a spiritual war. These entities are not who they say they are. The evidence shows this. This is the resistance movement you're seeing right here. We hope that you can understand that in this time that we are moving into, that this could be the last great hope for humanity. Living testimony, ladies and gentlemen. Living testimony. Last one. Yeah. Go ahead. Dave Ruffino's delusion resistance. We have a number of resistance groups that are working to stop this lie, to stop this deception. This is the delusion resistance group. Guy Malone, alien resistance group. Go ahead. This is the abduction counseling group that we have put together, along with Jim Wilhelmsen. Alien Abduction Crisis Centers of America. We are establishing counselors all over the entire country. Actually, we'll probably have to change the name because we've already spread outside of the USA. When these people need help, estimated 5 million people have gone through this experience. Who's going to help all of these people? They're begging for help. They're hurting people. We've started. We've established counselors all over. We're still looking for others that can take a phone call when there's somebody in need. I'd like to end tonight with a Jewish saying right out of Scripture. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord God, King and ruler of the universe. I thank you, everyone. I hope that I will never have to use the title again, the unwanted piece of the puzzle. Has this been accepted today? Have you received this information? My piece is now on the table. I will take that title away. I am no longer the unwanted piece of the puzzle. You guys have accepted that piece. You've heard it. It's now on the table. Let's you be the judge of what the picture is supposed to look like of the UFO phenomenon. Thank you, everyone.